Well, hi everyone, and this is probably the scariest episode I've ever done. Uh, this is the fourth episode of the 100 episode week. Yesterday you heard the 100 episode actually, but today is someone that is very close to me that I love and I absolutely adore. Unfortunately, that is why I'm freaking scared. She actually asked for the interview, but she is such a great human being, truly love her. And I'm sure she's not going to destroy my character too much. Ha ha ha. And the interview will have to go well because it's also her interview to eventually become my administrative assistant in my job. So there's a lot of things writing on this interview. But I wanted to introduce Anna Meyer. Anna Meyer is actually my girlfriend. So Anna, welcome to Finding Your Way Through Therapy.
Oh, thank you. I'm excited to be here. This is going to be a fun episode, I think.
I hope it will be, even though I'm scared a lot, but we can live with that. Um,
Why are you scared a lot?
Usually I have like the parameters and I can tell people what not to do because, I'm kind of running the podcast. But with you,
Hmm.
I'm not running the podcast. We're kind of equals because even though I'm interviewing you, you're my girlfriend. So we're equals. So that's why it's a little more scary. Not that I've ever treated any of my interviewees as not equals, but this one I truly have zero control out of what's the next words out of your mouth are going to be. But hey, Birdie will have my back, I'm pretty sure anyway. Um,
Hmm.
so the same few questions that come up with everyone is the same thing. So how about now that I introduced you as to how I know you, how about you introduce yourself to the audience?
All right, perfect. Well, thank you for having me. I know this is a big episode for you. I'm very proud of you.
Thank
This
you.
is I know you work hard on all of your episodes and you look forward to not only having your guests but being a guest on people's podcasts. So I think that that's really exciting. So I'm happy to be here. I know this is my kind of quasi interview for being your administrative assistant. I run a tight ship, so
That's what I heard.
yeah, so I'm happy to be here. I've never been on a podcast. I've never done a podcast. Um, but I think this will be fun. It'll be fun to see what questions you have and kind of what come from those questions. So thank you. As you said, I am my name's Anna Meyer. I am your girlfriend, partner, um whatever else comes to mind, right? And then I
Keep it clean. Keep it clean. My mom listens to this.
I always will. I
Okay.
always will. I am a little bit about me, I guess. I've been a nurse now for 20 years. So I know you have quite a few first responders and some members of the healthcare profession on your podcast. So I'm happy to be here. Um, Although I only speak for myself, I don't represent an organization or anything like that. I only speak from my experiences. And aside from being your girlfriend and a nurse, I'm a dog mom. That's it. To my little mixed breed birdie who
Well,
loves you.
Birdie always makes me smile every time I see her. It's interesting that I've put only girls around females or girls in my life. So maybe I need to talk to my therapist about that. But speaking of which, there's a
Hmm.
there's a standard question I ask all my guests.
Hmm.
And the question is, have you ever been in therapy yourself?
I have been in therapy. I think the best line though, and I think maybe to clear it up for people that think dating a therapist, right, comes with maybe being in therapy, but it's not. You
No.
can remind people what the first thing you said to me was. One
Oh,
of the
you
first
want me
things.
to say it? No, you deliver it so much better.
Okay.
I'm just the host here.
Okay. Yeah, the first thing you said. In fact, I think it was one of the things that caught my eye in your dating profile on the we met online. For people that don't know, we did meet online, and your dating profile said in all caps with several exclamation points after, I'm a therapist. I'm not your therapist. So anyway, so you're not my therapist.
No, I definitely there is a lot of ethical issues if I dated someone I do therapy with.
Yeah, yeah. So yes, you're not my therapist, but I have been in therapy before. Um, I've been in therapy most recently in the past couple years. And it's something that I do miss, not actively going now, but it's something I do miss. Um, I had a great person, great therapist. Um, so anyway, I think that therapy is important. It wasn't only the being a nurse during the pandemic that really drew me to therapy, but probably um, some of the relationships and that I was in the past several years. So needed to kind of sort through some of that.
And just to specify, she is no longer in therapy, but I am not her therapist. But that's how healthy I am, really. Um, but all joking aside, I also found it funny because I can't wait for the people who possibly have dated before you to hear exactly what you just said, because that line was dedicated to them, not necessarily to who I was dating. But thank you for understanding and making you laugh with that. Um, in therapy, some obviously this is the goal of this episode, 100 episodes in, we are working on getting people to see therapy in a good way. But
Mhm.
let's switch gears because we are here for a specific reason. The funny part is I was looking for special guests. I had a few ideas. And obviously you've heard a few of special episodes so far, but the idea of coming onto my podcast is strictly Anna's. And when she said that to me, I was like, wow, that's a great idea. So obviously, it's not like I said, oh my God, begrudgingly, I'm going to put her on. No, I wanted, because one of the things I've proud myself in my work and even in my podcast is that to be as authentic and as transparent as I possibly can. There are privacy things that I
Mhm.
absolutely respect. And obviously, this is something I'll always respect. And my guests may not have known that, but if they don't want to talk about something, I don't. And there's certain things about my relationship with Anna that you don't need to know about, but it's not bad stuff. It's just there's a difference between privacy and secrecy. I don't
Mhm.
keep any secrets. I don't believe in secrets, but I do believe in privacy. And there's certain things that are private. So anything I talk about today has been approved by both of us, except the questions I ask and whatever her answer is. I don't know what the hell she's going to say next. But that's good. That's what the point of this Howard Stern type of podcast is anyway. So now
Mhm.
you have all the time you want and you can explain to people how is it to date a therapist?
Oh, well, I think we need to clear up something first.
Sure.
So, the first time you told me you had a podcast, I'm like, oh, I've never been on a podcast. I want to go on your podcast. Like, I didn't really know what it was all about, right? I didn't know what to really expect. And then you would recommended a couple episodes with some people that you've had on that I may find really interesting. Um, I think you had somebody that I thought was absolutely amazing to listen to. I believe you had a pharmacist on at one point who was
Yes.
really great. That was really something that,
Shout out
you
Jake
know,
Nichols.
yes, yeah, she was great.
Oh,
Not to
that's a different
say,
interview. Yes. Jake Nichols was
yes,
a man, but there was another interview and I cannot think of the name right now, but you're right.
yeah, she was
That
amazing.
was I was on her podcast to clear up. I wasn't
Yes,
just the one
yes, that's
explaining it.
correct. Um, and then to you have our lives because we've been together for a little while now, right? Almost a year. Our lives have definitely personal lives, right? There's quite a few people that are in your personal life that have been on this podcast that I find absolutely truly amazing human beings. Um, so I think that the first piece about, or the first part to answer your question about what it's like to date a therapist. One, you remind me frequently that you're not my therapist, which I know.
And For the record, I didn't do it as much as she claims I did, but I did it once in a while, and that is it.
The second piece, and I think I was going to bring this up. One of the first disagreements we had was over feelings. And you got really upset with me because you were sharing your feelings. We were talking about something. And I remember I said to you, I'm like, are we going to talk about feelings now? And you got really upset about that. And I was like, what is the problem? Like, we can't always, like, we don't have to talk about feelings. And now sometimes I think we do it as a joke, but kind of serious, right? I think
Right.
that's our way of saying, ooh, I'm not sure I want to talk about this right now, right? Either one of us will say something. I usually say, I don't really want to talk about feelings right now, right? And you know that that's my cue to say, okay, we're not going to talk about this right now. We'll come back to it, but we're not doing it right now, right? And I think that with you, I know sometimes when you start to talk about feelings, I have to recognize that, and I have to be okay with being vulnerable sometimes and talking about feelings. Um, but we definitely have our moments where feelings, I don't like to do feelings sometimes, except for at the dinner table on Mondays.
Yes, that's how I get you. I go out to eat at your place on Monday nights, and I get, an hour of you talking about your feelings, and then I'm
That's
good
it.
for the next, week. I gotta hope that I don't have something that in the following Monday night, or we're done for 2 weeks of talking about stuff.
Yeah. So I think that's what it's like sometimes. But there's, all joking aside, the good piece, so I think about this is that, and I've shared this with you, as I become a little more tolerant, right, of when people need me differently, right? They need me to recognize that there's something that they need to express, and to feel that they're okay expressing their feelings with me, and that um, I'm a safe place for them to do that, and that's okay.
I think that, I give credit, I don't think we give enough credit to nurses in any type of setting. How many things they see that they need to just kind of like, okay, next, move on and do the next thing. So, for better or for worse. And again, no nurses I see, of course, are like that. Wink, wink. But it's hard because you need to kind of like put it aside because the next call is there. I think that sometimes nurses, not unlike first responders, and by the way, a lot of them are EMTs, paramedics before they become nurses, in my experience anyway. They need to kind of like cut off their feelings. And then
Mhm.
you get a guy like me who goes, no, no, let's talk about it. Yeah, it's a huge pain in the ass.
It is. I think that one of the sometimes, you know, we tend to we don't spend enough time though processing some of those feelings, and that our way of dealing with them is to just kind of put them aside and move on to the next thing, because that's how, specifically in my line of nursing, right? I've spent 20 years being an emergency department nurse. So um I think that for me, parts of that are being able to kind of, in that moment, I take care of someone and they are truly, some of these, some patients, right, it's their worst day of their life, but um, I'm able to then move on to the next thing, or have a conversation, or kind of move it aside, and I don't process it, right? But I think that one of the things now that I try to do is process some of that, and be a little bit more, mm, not available, but maybe a little more vulnerable in that, and recognize what I'm feeling.
I think that you talked about it earlier, and so I don't think I'm crossing any lines here, but we can always edit it if you don't want to. But you've had partners before that may not have been able to handle when you were having those struggles too. So sometimes you transfer that to your personal life and you get a person like me who wants to talk about feelings regularly. That becomes
Yeah,
like, well, very difficult for you. That's just my 2 cents here. I hope I didn't cross any lines by saying that.
you didn't. I think that's important to recognize, right? Sometimes, some people come with like a small tote bag of of baggage, and some people come with an entire luggage set. So, you fortunately or unfortunately, probably for you, unfortunately have a woman who comes with 41 years of baggage, and
Wait, what you're
comes.
41?
I know, I'm gonna be 42 soon. I'm so
And you've been
old.
dating since when you got born? This is really strange by the second. Let
No.
me write some notes here.
Right. Well, okay, so let's talk. I mean, since you start dating, right? Sometimes you're in high school, you're in college, whatever. I mean, it's all different, right? So it's different for people. But if you start dating for the better part of my life now, right? I've kind of taken something from each relationship, and it's either good or bad depending on the relationship, and I brought it with me, the good, the bad, the ugly.
Well, I'd like to say that it's just you, but I bring my shit down the road too. And I think that as we grow older, the bad part or the good part, depending on how you perceive it, I think it's good, but not everyone will see it that way, is that a little more what you want, and you know what you've been through, and you know definitely what the red flags are. I mean, if you don't recognize that when you start dating, I mean, we're going on a year right now, and we've had our baggages, we've had those moments, but the hardest part, I think, for many couples, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Anna, is that for me, I'm able to sometimes say, not all the time, because it's hard, and say, this is really coming from my ex or from someone I dated. And again, nothing bad and nothing that I want to expose because it's other people's stories and that's not mine. I'm
Mhm.
going to protect that. And same thing for you. There's stuff that comes up and that's because of an ex. And you're not trying to, and we're not opening any cans here either because that's her story and with her exes, not me. And being able to talk about that is really hard. It's almost as hard as feelings, if you ask me.
Mhm. I think so. I think that it's hard to recognize when certain pieces of you, not those good pieces, right? Those bad pieces come out, and
I don't
you
have any, but please talk for yourself.
okay. Um yeah, I'll let you work through that stuff where you talk about your own kind of bad pieces. But um I think that the hard piece, right, is that when they do come up, when those kind of really hard things come up, you tend to like not want them to come out, and then all of a sudden it's happening and you're like, oh god, this is it, this is the exact moment where it's like, this is what's going to seal the deal. He won't want to be in a relationship with me. He doesn't. Right. I think part of that, right, is insecurities that I have, that if I didn't hear from you, or if I didn't have um if you weren't able to spend time with me, or that really truly, that like anxious attachment style, right, that I had to really work through, and we had to build trust on. But it was really important for me to be able to express to you what I needed from you in order to feel safe, and in order to feel confident in our relationship and comfortable.
No, I
And
think
one of those you still do to this day. Even if we have had a disagreement, or maybe didn't see eye to eye on something, even when we're upset with each other, you still every morning send me a good morning text if we're not together.
right. Well, I don't do
Just
it when
kidding, we're
you're
never
next to me.
together in the morning.
Oh, yes, this is being recorded. Edit this out, please, Laura. Laura, I'm kidding, of course. No, but I think it's, you know, goes back to Mark Scholes and, you know, the attachment style. That was an episode beginning of at the end of last year. But
Mhm.
I think it's also kind of like realizing that relationships are not going to be perfect. And I think that at our, you know, I've been 29 for over 18 years now, so it's pretty good. So I have a lot of experience being 29. But all
Mm,
joking aside, I know it's the same different baggage that I have now that I even had a year ago, 2 years ago. It's recognizing that too. You know, Anna is someone who's helped me grow on a few things too, because the other thing that, you know, you learn from experience is that you bring your job sometimes to your private life and, you know, give credit where credit is due. And it's like, okay, no, no, just human. You're a human right now. Just don't worry
mhm.
about it. You don't need to be soccer dad. You don't need to be a therapist, a podcaster, just be you. And, you know, I give her a lot of credit because sometimes you need to be called on that. And sometimes I accept it. Well, most of the time I accept it. Sometimes I grumble a little bit, but, you know, that's obviously your fault, not mine. Um,
Yeah. No, I think sometimes you don't know when to turn it off, right? This past week, I've had some really tough weeks recently. And, this past week, I remember you saying to me, I'm here for you. Tell me what you need me to do. And I was like, I don't need you to do anything. I just need you to listen to me. I don't need you to you're my partner, right? You're my significant other, but I don't need you to solve anything for me, right? I can do that. I just needed to go to a safe place and be able to say all of that I needed to get out, and then move on, and I'm better, right?
but I think that it's healthy also. I talk about this to, you know, sorry for the therapist talk here, but I'm going to have to be doing that. It's still part of the podcast. I think the question I asked you is that you want me to just listen or you want me to offer you solutions? And I think that that's the best thing to do because men tend to want to solve shit.
Hmm.
I know I do. I know the majority of men I work with are the same way. And women like to be listened to. They don't want to be told what to do. And they certainly don't want to be mansplained. And if someone needs to be explained what mansplaining is, like you can just direct message me and I'll explain it to you. But all joking aside, I think that that's the stuff that you learn from being in a couple for a while too, because it, there's times where I felt all the, you know, any job is hard, period. End the story. Being a nurse is a
Yes.
really fucking hard job too. And sometimes you want to offer solutions because you know, I've worked in an ER for 15 years, give or take, on a crisis team. So sometimes I'm like, I want to give her a solution, but she doesn't want that solution. So I go, put the words back in your mouth. Put the words back in your. I don't know. I feel like that. I do that sometimes, and then I go, okay, back, listen mode, listen mode, listen mode.
Yeah, you do sometimes. And then I do remind you of that, right? I remind you sometimes. I'm like, I
I
don't
do.
need you to solve this for me. I know how to do it. It's what happens when you surround yourself with strong, independent women, right?
Yeah, I don't know why I decided that in my life, but maybe perhaps I'm also kind of like and not intimidated because that's the one thing. You know, I give Anna a lot of credit because she's a very strong, successful woman. And for me, that doesn't intimidate me whatsoever. And I think that's something that was kind of new to her because sometimes she'd be like, I have to do this. Okay. Well, you know, no, don't yell at me. I told you it was fine. I'm okay with that. I've got shit to do too. And I think that what I give, you know, there's a lot of things I admire about Anna, but one of the things is she is a strong, independent woman. Sometimes I want to kind of like, okay, you don't need to be independent about this part. But in all reality, I don't want to be explaining to her how to do her life. And that's something that hopefully I've done in our relationship on a regular basis.
I think so. You do some things like sometimes it's like hard, right? Because you want people to be independent. Now it's like, oh, can you just help me with this? Just do this. Um, but then I think that if you would go and I can't think of a great example now, but if you would go and do that for me, I'd be like, why are you doing that? I can do that on my own. I don't need your help.
We won't talk about vacuuming a fireplace, but that's a whole
No,
different podcast. That's a
I
whole
think
different
that
podcast. We're not
that's a
going there.
great example when I was like, I wanted you to do it a certain way and you were doing it your way. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so painful. And then there was dust everywhere. And I was like, that was the moment that I was like, ugh, I just need to chill out. Like, you were doing it, it was fine, but just because it wasn't the way that I wanted you to do it didn't mean it was the wrong way.
And for the record, she's right. I did originally I had it in the wrong direction, so dust went flying. But then when I fixed it, I did it my own way and it was working. But because the dust was still in the air, she had a response of, "What's all this dust? What are you doing to my house?" We solved it by, I don't remember how, but we solved it and we can laugh about it today.
We solved it by you taking a deep breath and going out and buying some new like pants or something, sweatpants at Marshall's. And it was 15 minutes and we both calmed down and that was the end of it.
Marshall, please contact me for this free plug that we just did. So I don't make any money for the record.
Oh, I
But
think and that was like that was a tough dinner.
right, but I think that that's what we've done, in any relationship too. I think it's important, even though this is, we talk about me and you, the beginning was a lot harder than where we're at today, but that doesn't mean we don't have difficult moments. And if you expect a relationship to be perfect, then probably give up. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
not even joking. Relationships are work. And sometimes we don't want to work, and sometimes we do want to work. Sometimes we want to put a graphic tee on, and sometimes we can't. That's just how it is. And even for those of you who are on YouTube right now, will see that I have my graphic shirt. I did this purposely because there's someone in this interview that does not like me wearing graphic shirts. But since she gave me this one, nothing.
Whoa. I think you need to be I think that if you've listened to this podcast for long enough, people know that you have a love for wrestling.
They, it's very clear for those of you who know. And if you don't
And
know, been a fan since age 4.
yeah. And so the wrestling though isn't just like we watch wrestling or you watch wrestling and then that's the end of it. It is it is carried on into the majority of the wardrobe that you have. So sometimes I have to I'm like, hey, we're going somewhere. Please don't wear
You can
that
say it.
specific
You
shirt,
can
that
you
God
can
mode shirt.
you can
Like,
say Roman Reigns has a shirt that says greatness on a different level, but the letters on the side says God, God. And Anna does not like that shirt whatsoever.
there's God mode. There's another one too.
Acknowledge me, head of the
Yeah,
table. I am
there.
plugging Roman Reigns. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I don't remember. But that is definitely something that I will probably. That's going to be that is a boundary for me that I will not be attending any um wrestling things.
Right. We'll never go to, a what's it called? The Housewives of Blank, any event that's around that.
It's sad though. That's unfortunate for you.
I think you're missing out on the whole bloodline storyline, but that's just me. Never mind talking about NJPW, but that's even beyond the scope of what we can do here.
Yeah. So I think what's happening with wrestling is it's real, you know.
It's real. Okay. Wow. I may have to put someone on like we call them Section 12s in Massachusetts, but we'll talk a little later on about this.
Just like the housewives is real.
Again, stay there. I think it's interesting because I always joke around when Anna, like we both watch stage shows.
Mhm.
They're just very different, but very much the same.
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely.
And for those of you who did not know, it's sports entertainment. Wrestling is, I don't use the F word here. It's set up and it's something that they know a predetermined outcome. However, it is very difficult. I think the housewives are similar. They have, okay, cause of problems with this, but after that, it's kind of improv and whatever happens,
Right.
happens.
Right.
So again, I think maybe it's because it's so similar that we don't like it. I don't.
But I watch it.
Yeah, well, at least the housewives don't wear shirts that say God mode, so that's good.
That's true.
Just saying.
That's true. I love
So,
me some housewives.
and Anna is also very happy to date someone who is a Montreal Canadiens fan in Boston.
Mm-hmm.
And she went to her first hockey games in the last couple of months.
I have. Oh, that's where I was going with the wrestling thing. Thank you for getting me back on track. It's very therapist of you.
It's
The
a it's a podcast host too, but
um that yeah, there are certain things that would be a hard no, but I was very interested in really getting into hockey. I really enjoy it. So we did. We went to 2 games out in LA, and we had a tough experience on our way home, which you talked about. And I think that we shared this a little bit, that both of our reactions were very different, right?
right.
Uh so um I think that very much of mine was, and I had a hard time with this. I'll be very honest about that. I had a hard time that I didn't have a hard time.
Right.
And we had talked a little bit about that after experiencing that, during in that moment, I was very like, okay, we just have to figure out what we're doing. It's very much this, like, and I ended up being involved a little bit with the individual on the plane, but
I think
and
it's
that
okay.
was
It's okay for to say because I mentioned it in the podcast that prescribed um, benzodiazepine
yeah.
because we were having trouble with a physical restraint. She had something that we would consider in this field a chemical restraint. We didn't have a syringe of stuff to do it, as one of the passengers had recommended and requested. Uh,
Hmm.
but Anna was more than happy while I was taking care of my daughters to go and help out. And I think it's important for me to say that because I did share that on the podcast. And since you brought it up, I think I can go there and say it again because it was very important because it probably helped calm the situation. No pun intended, by the way, just calm the situation for that particular passenger.
Yeah, and I think that, that's the hard part, like you mentioned earlier, right? That part of my work and part of the life that I live is very much like, it's episodic, right? It's we handle this piece and then we move on to the next. And that was that moment for me. That was something that was, in the beginning, it was finding out who needed the most support and where it was needed, and that was with you and the girls, right? And then it was, okay, that seems to have kind of leveled out a little bit. Then it was, how can I help and what can I offer? And I did that piece of it. And then I think, as we often do sometimes in really tough situations, we add humor, right? I know that I tried to add humor, and I think it was a really tough um, getting off the plane. We got our luggage, we were getting to the car, and we're sitting in traffic, and the first words that we kind of said, right? We got in the car with the girls, we were like, "Where's Balthazar?" Like, right? That's how we broke the tension, was to use a little bit of humor. Um, and then that was kind of it. And then I think, as we both kind of processed it, I just moved on, and I didn't realize that it had that you were, I don't want to say struggling, but that it had really impacted you in a way that
You
I
can say
didn't.
struggling. There's no shame in that in my game.
Yeah, but I don't think it really was struggling. Struggling, sometimes I think people think that if you're struggling with something, it like impacts the way in which you're able to like do your work and kind of move on. There wasn't any of that. It was this own internal piece that you were like really having a hard time with. And I think that in that moment, I really saw this. I saw you as not just, my partner and my boyfriend, right? But I saw you as a dad. I'm not saying that I hadn't seen you as a dad, like interacting with the girls and things like that, but it was really seeing you as a dad was something that, I didn't get to. That was hard. That was really hard.
Well, it was not easy, and, I think that when we were on the plane and on the way back, I remember thinking that, I was able to on the plane not to keep it very much calm because my crisis mode kicked in, and, when you do that for several years, you kinda do good. You dating an ER nurse, her crisis mode kicks in, she was really good at it. Um, I processed it differently, and,
Mhm.
there's that's just how it is, and that's life, and all I wanna say besides that as not even a follow-up, but just as people would know, my daughter went on a plane and came back and has had 0 issues with it, so, in some ways, by me and Anna not doing our own thing, being in our lane, recognizing what we're going through or not, basically, and I think that that was fine, and not only that, we helped someone handle it, and I'll tell you what our best friend is, dark humor. And I think that that probably sealed the deal for some of like, I know my daughters are, they're my daughters, so they probably have a weird sense of excuse me, humor. But, I think the dark humor that we did on the way back towards, after the
Yeah.
traffic really, really helped. So never tell me that dark humor doesn't work.
Yeah, no, it definitely worked in that moment, but I think that it was important for we didn't we didn't normalize it, right? Well, maybe we did a little bit. I feel like I did quite a bit,
I think
right? I'm
it's
like, oh,
I
this
think
is like
I don't
the
wanna be
world we live in now.
I think normalizing or at least saying, "Well, it was abnormal, but you were safe."
Right, right.
I think so. It's not maybe normalizing it, but it's like, this is not something that's gonna happen on every plane ride, but we were able to, like, shit happens and we're gonna take care of that. Said shit a lot today. Anyway,
You
um,
did.
I know, I'm realizing that right now. But at the end of the day, like, I think my daughters really bought into that, and that's a good thing,
Yeah.
and they processed it differently than me and Anna, frankly, and that's okay, and that's good, and I think it's good to have a strong partner who's literally behind you uh,
Mhm.
when you're going through that with your kids and being able to be there for each other. And yes, this time I needed it more than her, and that's okay. And there's times where I'm sure that Anna's needed more than me, and that's okay. That's life in my experience.
It is life. That's kind of what we do, right?
But now let's after we've been very serious for the last 5 minutes, let's
Yeah.
lift up a little bit of this seriousness.
Okay.
So now that everyone kind of knows our relationship, and I can only speak for myself. I am very happy. And like I said, it's not perfect, but I didn't expect it to be perfect, and it's okay not to be perfect, but she's probably the best partner I've had. Having said that, do you have any recommendation for people who might go like, gee, a therapist might be nice to date, or I'm dating a therapist. What now? Do you have any advice for them? Don't? Okay. She shook her head. If you want to go on YouTube, that doesn't translate well on a podcast, but
No,
she said don't. Interview over. I'm sorry.
yeah, I was like, wait, we got disconnected. No, and I do have, I think some of my advice, right, is that maybe my only advice really is that each person's going to be different, right? What they need out of a relationship is going to be different. I don't think that it would ever be the same. Like if I ever dated another therapist, they're not you, right?
I am the best.
And
You're right.
yes, and and
Nothing like fishing for a compliment by setting it up for yourself.
yeah, exactly. Um, no, I think that part of it too is that you have to learn that they have feelings too, right? That they experience life, even though they spend all day or the majority of their days work is done sometimes just processing things. But just as life is a little bit different, right? And I can't imagine, and we talked about this before, I can't imagine what it would be like to really just talk to people all day long, right? And to hear things. And there's a lot of sure there's a lot of trauma that comes along with that, right? Hearing people's experiences. And I think that's hard. And I think that early on in our relationship we set boundaries with each other, right? We set some boundaries that were tough. um and one of those boundaries is Fridays. And we talk pretty early in the evening on Fridays, but usually by Friday late evening we're done. Like, we're both just kind of tucked out for the week, and that's it. And that's kind of like our not alone time together. It's separate of anyone else. And so that part is that's our time.
Okay, we can break a wall here if that's okay with you. It's Bravo time for one of us, and for the other person, it's SmackDown time.
Yes.
Let's break that wall right away.
Hmm.
But no, and I think the other part that I again, let's I dated a few people, obviously, um, but I had one long day a week that I do. And the one boundary that truly Anna understood is that there's some days, right now it's on Tuesdays is my long day.
Hmm.
There's some Tuesdays I finish late, which also affects because Anna starts early, so that plays a factor. But there's some Tuesdays where we might want to talk because we haven't talked all day, and she goes, "Do you really want to talk tonight?" I'm like, "No, talked out, done. Well, I just want to say good night." And some days I'm like, "No, we can talk. I'm fine." And she
Hmm.
accompanies me all the way. It's about a 35-minute ride to get to my house, and she accompanies me for the whole ride essentially, or until she gets tired. But ultimately, knowing that, look, there's days I just don't want to talk to people,
Yeah.
and knowing that it's not like I don't want to talk to you, Anna. I just don't want to talk to humans. Is another great boundary that you understood very well because it's easy for people to feel offended by that. But most of my friends, I think all of my friends, and obviously you, Tuesday night I'm drunk. I'm just
Hmm.
junk. And I know I'm junk, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But I'm not sitting here talking about wrestling storylines and eating bonbons all day. I'm actually working my butt off and hearing stuff that sometimes can be very hard. And I think that the other boundary that you really understood, and I give you a lot of credit, is that. And I think the other boundary that we've done that's also very cool is that one day a week, it's our time. We eat together. That's when we have those feelings. And then depending on the night, we sometimes watch some wrestling, sometimes we watch Jeopardy, sometimes we'll watch a sitcom, but we'll do something together, just sitting together because we don't get a whole lot of time between the
Right.
busy time at your job. And obviously I have a job too, and we don't live next door, so we have to find these complementary times to work, and I think we do a fantastic job at that too. So yes,
I
this
agree.
so everyone listen to our love story. That's what I'm saying.
If only they knew it started over cupcakes or cake. And
Oh yeah, because you can share that unless you want me to share it.
no, we met. Well, I think it's really funny that it kind of came out right in a story with one of the girls the other day. But it was, oh, she must have really wanted to meet you. And I was like, no, I really love cake.
And I was at a wedding, and we were just like flirting at that point, and she was actually at a concert, if I remember correctly, in Foxborough,
Hmm.
Massachusetts, at the stadium. And I had sent her pictures of the cupcakes of the wedding I was at. And she's like, "Oh, those look so good." I said, "Well, do you want one?" And she's like, "Yeah, great." I said, "Well, I guess we got to meet tomorrow." And
Hmm.
so I went back. I was about to leave. I was literally in my car, and I went back in and I talked to, we'll say the one of the two parties in the wedding, and I said,
Hmm.
literally, I need extra cupcakes, and they more than happy gave me a couple more cupcakes, so I can go and have my first date with you, Dad, Sunday.
Yeah. Yep.
So
We did.
you know, you can meet through an app, but cupcakes, that's where you get through people's hearts.
It is. I mean, we might be onto something.
I mean, maybe that's the next app for us.
Cupcakes.
Cup meetovercupcake.com. There you go.
Yeah, there it is. Somebody takes that. We're really.
Copyright, copyright, copyright. I yelled it. I yelled it. This is on record.
Yeah, I think, maybe people don't know too that we don't have the greatest track record for doing things. Like that day was so blazing hot and humid, and we were just
Just let me be very
in
clear. In
May.
May in the Northeast of the United States.
It was, I mean, we were just like drenched. I also brought my dog on the first date because I wasn't going to leave her another day. Um, but
And for protection.
and that's right. And
Except she
then
loves everyone. So who knows?
yeah, exactly. She's not a great, watchdog. But we had that was it. And then what else did we do when it was like we went and did that bike trail thing, and we thought, oh, it's going to be nice and cool, it'll be in the shade. It was also like 100 degrees and humid. And then for Christmas we went to see, or
A Christmas
this
gift that you gave me was Taylor Tomlinson. Shout out Taylor.
right, yes, and so we went to see Taylor Tomlinson on the coldest day on record in the last 60 something years in the state of Massachusetts. And we went to dinner, and then we walked to the Wing Theater, and it hurt. It was so cold out.
And I'm going to keep it vague because and sometimes you got to be careful with podcasts and people recognizing themselves. It was a great bonding experience for us because we have that. But I think what was even more bonding is what happened at the table next to us on that
Oh
day.
yes.
And I'm just going to say that if you have $20 in your pocket, you don't necessarily return $10 worth of fries. You bought them. We'll leave it at that. But it was great because one of the things that I also think really is, I don't think of myself as a, whatever they call them, social warriors in this world,
Mm-hmm.
but I am a social warrior in some ways. And it was great to see that Anna was exactly the same way. And so we kind of knew that about each other, but that example of how angry we got. And if you want to know the story, DM me or Anna. Anna's information will be available, but I'll forward it for you. Um, but I ultimately think that that was another thing that, relationships aren't made on cupcakes and 5-hour walks. They're made on moments of, hey, look, I'm outraged about that too. Or I
Yeah.
really love that. And yeah, we may not have the same taste in predetermined outcomes, but nonetheless, we tend to both like predetermined outcomes and we can talk about those.
Yeah. Yeah, that was it was. I think that was one of those moments where I was like, oh, we are on the same wavelength, and we share the exact same, I guess it's we know. I think sometimes in this world, right, we forget that just because you have money doesn't mean you get to treat people any differently, right?
As I joked around earlier, but truly, yes, I have you on, and it's a little different to have someone I'm very intimate with, literally on. Um, I mean, we talk regularly. I don't know why you're
Mhm.
laughing. That's all I was
I'm
saying.
not laughing.
Okay. Um, but I also think that one of the things that both of our values. This is the stuff that, maybe we can leave on this, because I think it would be a great, like, high. We value humans and we
Hmm.
value equity. And for me, the person who has nothing is as important as the person who has everything, if there's such a thing for both, for the record. And we
Absolutely.
treat him equally.
Yep.
And I think that we've had a few moments like that, that was just amazing. And our relationship wasn't made over the last year because we had long walks in the park and on the beach. We had moments of difficulties, but more importantly, we had small moments like that that just said that we had the same amount of values. So I'm going to leave it on that high note, unless you want to add anything.
No, you did a great job.
So I want to thank you. Uh,
Thank you.
for all the compliments. I can only pay you about $10 per compliment. I know I talked about 20 before the interview, but it's really 10. We'll negotiate that if you don't mind.
Okay.
I Well, see, that's why I wanted it on the podcast. That way she can't ask for it later on. But all joking aside, thank you, Anna. It was great. And I hope everyone enjoyed the interview.
Thank you.